The last thing Mark Stevens felt was peace. Not the biting cold that had turned his fingers blue, not the exhaustion that made each heartbeat a labor, just peace, knowing his daughter would wake up warm in the cabin 3 miles south. If you're feeling this story in your heart already, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful true stories of courage and sacrifice. It began with a weekend trip to northern Alaska, a father-daughter adventure Mark had promised Sophie since her mother passed away 2 years ago. Mark wasn't an outdoorsman by trade, he was an accountant who wore suits and organized spreadsheets. But Sophie needed this. They both did. The cabin they rented was remote, gloriously disconnected, the listing had called it. No cell service, no Wi-Fi, just pristine wilderness and the promise of northern lights dancing across the winter sky. The first day had been perfect. They'd hiked, built snowmen, and Sophie had laughed for the first time in months, really laughed, the kind that reaches your eyes and heals something broken inside. "Dad, this is the best day ever," she had said, her breath visible in the crisp air as they roasted marshmallows in the cabin's stone fireplace. Mom would have loved it. Mark had felt something loosen in his chest then, a knot of grief that had been wound tight since the funeral. She would have, he agreed, watching his 12-year-old daughter's face glow in the firelight. "She's with us, sophomore. Always." The weather report had warned of dropping temperatures, but nothing catastrophic. Mark had checked their supplies, the emergency radio, the generator. He was cautious by nature, always planning 3 steps ahead. It was what made him good at his job, and what had made him a good husband and father. But some things you can't plan for. The storm hit just after midnight. Not the gentle snowfall they'd been told to expect, but a howling monster that rattled the cabin's windows and sent the temperature plummeting. Mark woke to the sound of the generator dying, a sputtering, gasping sound that meant trouble. Without it, the heating system would fail, and in temperatures this extreme, that wasn't just uncomfortable, it was lethal. He checked the emergency radio. The forecast had been catastrophically wrong. -50°F and dropping. The closest record was -71°F set in 1971 at Prospect Creek. Tonight might break that record. Sophie was still asleep, bundled in blankets, her face peaceful. Mark made a decision then, one that parents make instinctively, to protect their child at any cost. The snowmobile in the shed was their only hope. The nearest town was 15 miles away, but there was another rental cabin just 3 miles south. If he could reach it, find help, or bring back fuel for the generator. Mark wrote a note for Sophie, "Gone to get help. Stay wrapped in blankets. Use the fireplace. I'll be back by morning. I promise. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Dad." He layered every piece of cold-weather clothing he had, but it wasn't enough for the conditions. Not even close. The professionals would have called this attempt suicide. But to Mark, staying put was the greater risk. The snowmobile started on the 3rd try, its headlight cutting a weak path through the swirling snow. Mark could barely see 10 feet ahead, but he had studied the map obsessively before the trip. 3 miles south. Keep the frozen lake to the right. Don't stop. A mile in, the cold began to bite through his layers. His extremities burned, then numbed. The snow was heavier now, a white wall that seemed solid. The snowmobile's engine whined in protest. At the 2-mile mark, disaster struck. The snowmobile hit something buried beneath the snow, perhaps a fallen tree, and lurched violently. Mark was thrown clear, landing in a snowdrift that might have saved him from broken bones but offered no protection from the cold. The snowmobile wouldn't restart. Something was broken inside it, like so many things in Mark's life these past 2 years. But unlike those other broken things, he couldn't simply learn to live with this one. He had to continue on foot. 1 mile. He could walk 1 mile. People ran 4 miles every day for fun. 1 mile to save Sophie. The walk became a stumble. The stumble became a crawl. The temperature had dropped to an apocalyptic -71 degrees Fahrenheit according to the small thermometer on his watch, tying the state record. His tears froze on his cheeks as he thought of Sophie's mother, of the promises he'd made to her as she lay dying. "I'll take care of our girl. I'll keep her safe." When Mark saw the lights of the cabin through the trees, he almost thought he was hallucinating. But no, it was real. Somehow, he had made it. The family inside, a couple with 3 teenage boys, were stunned when they opened the door to find a man more ice than human on their doorstep. They pulled him in, worked quickly to treat his severe hypothermia and frostbite. Mark could barely speak, but he managed the most important words: "My daughter, alone, our cabin, please." The father and oldest son prepared immediately, despite Mark's weak protests that they wait until the storm passed. They wouldn't hear of leaving a child alone. They had proper Arctic gear, a heavy-duty snowmobile with GPS, emergency supplies. "We'll bring her here," they promised. "Rest now." Mark fought to stay conscious, to wait for Sophie's arrival. The mother, a nurse, treated his frostbitten extremities and wrapped him in thermal blankets as her youngest son's boiled water for tea. She spoke softly, assuring him that her husband and son would find Sophie, that everything would be all right. As warmth slowly returned to his core, Mark felt a strange detachment, as if he were floating slightly above his own body. The nurse noticed the change in his eyes. She checked his pulse, his breathing. Something was wrong, dangerously wrong. Hypothermia can cause hidden cardiac issues, even after warming begins. "Stay with me," she urged, reaching for the satellite phone to call for emergency evacuation. "Your daughter will be here soon. You need to stay with us." Mark tried. God knows, he tried. He thought of Sophie's face, of the life stretching ahead of her. He had gotten help. She would be safe. That was what mattered. As his consciousness faded, Mark had a vision of his wife waiting for him, her hand outstretched. "Not yet," he whispered, fighting against the pull. "Sophie needs me." But sometimes, no matter how hard we fight, the body simply cannot continue. The damage was too severe, the internal organs shutting down one by one, the heart strained beyond endurance. Mark Stevens survived -71 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures. He crossed miles of Arctic wilderness with nothing but a father's love propelling him forward. He reached help and ensured his daughter's rescue. But he didn't see the morning. When Sophie arrived at the cabin an hour later, bundled in proper Arctic gear and crying with relief, she found strangers waiting with the news. Her father was gone, his final act one of ultimate sacrifice. The rescue team that airlifted them out the next day said it was a miracle Mark had made it as far as he did. The medical examiner later confirmed that no amount of emergency care could have saved him, the internal damage from the extreme cold had been too extensive. He had literally kept himself alive through sheer force of will long enough to save his daughter. In the months that followed, Sophie went to live with her aunt, her father's sister who had the same kind eyes and methodical mind. She carried her grief like a stone, heavy and ever-present. But on the 1-year anniversary of that terrible night, Sophie received a package. Inside was a journal, her father's, that had been found in his office during the clearing of their old house. The final entry was dated 3 days before their trip. "Sometimes I worry I'm not enough for Sophie," he had written. "That without her mother, she's missing too much. But today she smiled, really smiled, when I told her about our trip. I'd walk through fire to see that smile. I'd cross oceans and deserts and Arctic tundras. I hope someday she understands that being her father was the greatest gift of my life. Greater than any success, any achievement. When everything else falls away, that's what remains. That's what matters." Sophie read those words by the light of her bedroom window, watching as the first stars appeared in the evening sky. She remembered her father's note from that night, "I love you more than all the stars in the sky." She realized then that her father hadn't really left her. That what he gave her, not just that night but every day of her life, was with her still. The courage to face impossible odds. The knowledge that she was worth fighting for. The certainty that love doesn't end, even when life does. 10 years later, Sophie Stevens founded the Mark Stevens Wilderness Safety Foundation, which has saved countless lives through education, equipment donations, and emergency response training. The foundation's motto, inscribed on every piece of safety gear they distribute, reads, "Love finds a way through the coldest night." And somewhere, beyond the veil that separates us from those we've lost, a father watches his daughter with pride, knowing that his final journey through the cold was worth every painful step. If this story touched your heart, please remember to like and subscribe. Your support helps us share more stories of extraordinary love and sacrifice, reminders that even in our darkest, coldest moments, the human spirit can overcome impossible odds, not always to save ourselves, but to save those we love.